Welcome to the Aiki Dojo Podcast. I am David Ito, Chief Instructor of the Aikido Center of Los Angeles, and with me is...
Ken Watanabe.
And Bill D'Angelo. So today's topic is, how does age affect Aikido training?
Oh, so, I mean, are you talking about aging, or are you talking about age brackets?
Both. It can be both. So it could be about aging in practice, but I think we're going to have some ideas and questions, but I think that, we tangentially talk about this all the time, and we talk about it after class, but I would say the answer is both.
Okay, so, I mean, does age affect how we learn Aikido?
I mean, I think age definitely affects how we learn Aikido.
In what way?
Physically and mentally. Physically, depending on your age, you have different physical conditioning. You might have injuries. You might have a different physical development, as opposed to kids versus older people. They might have their bone density, that kind of thing. Mentally, how you process information, your maturity, your temperament.
I think some of it is plasticity, right? I mean, when you're younger, well, there's two advantages to doing it when you're younger. One is, over your lifetime, you can get more reps.
Yes.
And the more reps you do, the more likely you are to get muscle memory, mental memory. So I think like all of us, I mean, both of you started before I did. I started at 24. And
I started at 19.
I also started when I was 19 years old.
Yeah. So what was your experience starting as before you were 20?
Well, no, but I mean, I didn't, it's not to be evasive, but it's really more about learning Aikido at 20 is different than learning Aikido at 40 or 50. But the thing is that each one has its advantage and each one has its disadvantage.
Yeah.
So you say, what was it like when I started? When you're 19 years old, your advantage is that you have youth, you have energy,
durability,
you have time, you have all these things that are on your side, but you don't have maturity.
Right.
You don't have the proper mindset. You're not wise. You're not experienced. You're kind of, a dumb kid.
Right.
And so, when you're thinking about this idea of, what was it like when you first started? Yeah, you have to leverage those assets.
Right.
But then when you get older, you have to leverage being wise. You have to leverage, you get a better understanding of your body when you're older.
Right.
You think, oh, I can't really do that.
But what do you both remember? Now that we've talked about advantage versus disadvantage, leveraging your capabilities. Do you have any specific memories of what it was like to start Aikido when you were 19?
Well, there's a funny thing that happened. When we were in the old days, there were stairs going up to the dojo entrance.
Right.
And so that was remember the landing was about 4 feet?
Yes.
When I was young, I would just run and then I would just jump up onto the landing 4 feet. And then Sensei would get all mad. You have to use the stairs. And I'd be like, what do you need to use the stairs for? Because I could leap up 4 feet onto this thing. After Sensei died, I remember someone had taken down the stairs to do something. And I ran and I jumped and I totally, I totally scraped my shin because I couldn't get my leg 4 feet, my foot 4 feet up onto the platform. And then I was like, oh,
that's why.
Aging. So, but I mean, when you were 19 years old, do you think it was easy to learn Aikido?
Back when I was 19 years old, I could remember everything. You told me one thing, I remembered it. Nowadays, you tell me something, I don't know if I can remember it. Back then.
That's super interesting because what you're saying is Sensei's story was about physical capability and having a vertical leap of 48 inches. But what you're saying is your recollection is your mental capacity made you an easier learner, which I think is interesting that you both have totally different stories about what it was to be a young student.
But as a young person joining the dojo, I was completely unathletic. I was out of shape. I was young and I had energy. I had energy to burn, but I was not in shape, cardiovascular or muscular wise. I was not a sportsman.
But you got in shape.
I got in shape because I had to be in shape.
Right.
Aikido made me get into shape.
Right.
I remember being tired during the warm-up. And the warm-up, you think that is the most easiest part of Aikido.
Same. I would get tired during the warm-up. After the warm-up, the rest of the class, I was dying. And then eventually, I was fine. After Ukemi, gone. Yeah. Then eventually, after Tenkan, gone. After first technique we did, gone. Until I could do one whole class, I was fine. Second class, gone. Until I could do maybe 2 or 3 classes all in a row. Remember the high intensity we used to work out?
Sensei, do you have, like, as Ken's talking about, do you have any recollections about your mental state as a young student, as opposed to obviously when you're young, you have physical durability, capability, or you get it quickly. But do you have any perceptions about what it was like?
Well, I mean, that's where I learned a lot about the mind, because I studied a lot of sports psychology at that time. And one of my teachers was really in college was really into sports psychology. And so talking about visualization and all these different things and cool. mindset, and so and then reading Furuya Sensei's newsletter, because this is before the internet, right? This is 1990. But reading Furuya Sensei's newsletter, he would make some point. He would have some, he talked about making the chain method. You're only as strong as your weakest link. So you go to your weakest link and you make it your strongest link. You go back to the bottom, make your weakest link, and then you're constantly...
It's an iterative process.
Yeah, and that you think, oh, okay, and then you just had to show up to class because Sensei made the class dynamic physically, but you also had to, you have to learn, in Aikido, you have to learn to use your lower body and upper body, your left and your right. There's no one-sided, like in tennis, you're just using one side most of the time. And so the mindset that you had to develop was like this warrior's mindset, because the classes were physically brutal.
Yeah, they were demanding.
Brutal. I was always nervous coming to a dojo. I had a little bit of anxiety because you never know who's going to tune you up in there. Someone may throw you down hard. And back then, as a beginner, your kemi is not really that developed. I could not read my opponent's movement because I was just too inexperienced, too stiff, too inexperienced.
I think, Sensei, you bring up a really interesting point about the mentality of it being left and right, because almost everything that we do is left or right, but for most people it's right. Furuya Sensei was left-handed, but I noticed that too in early training, was that having to get good mentally at every technique, both sides. I found that challenging. I did really notice, especially in the first couple of years, I definitely had one side was much better than the other side, and it took a long time mentally to commit to that.
There's this funny thing that happened when I was in college. I studied kinesiology and physical education for my bachelor's degree, and we did this muscle testing. So they tested your body fat and your bioelectrical impedance of the muscle.
Right. The time.
So, how many muscle fibers fire at once and all those types of things. When the person did the test, he goes, I think I made a mistake. You got to do it twice. So he did it again. He goes, I guess it's not a mistake. The body fat percentages on my legs, left to right, arms, left to right, were almost exactly the same.
Wow.
And the bioelectrical impedance of the muscle was almost exactly the same. And then he said the other thing is when they tested it, I had a mixture of fast and short fibers. So anaerobic and aerobic. He said, most times you don't see that. He said, what do you do for exercise? And at that time I go, oh, just martial arts. But the left and the right were almost completely balanced.
That's a pretty amazing story, because for me, I wouldn't say I had a hard time, but it was definitely a new experience to think that way. How long have you been training when they did that test? Do you think a couple of years?
No, 7 years.
7 years.
Oh, 7 years.
6 or 7 years.
Yeah. Wow. So the training effect had taken over in your body.
Yeah.
What rank were you in Aikido when this happened? Nidan, Sandan?
Nidan, well... 7
years?
I want to say Sandan, but I was held back a lot. because Free Sensei and I didn't have a very good relationship, so I was always held back. So I mean, I must have been maybe Nidan or Sandan.
So you're probably maybe about Sandan Yondan level, realistically, skill-wise and physically.
Yeah, I was hostile then, man. I would try to fight anyone. If someone said Aikido's fake, I'd be like, "What'd you say? You want? Let's go right now." But yeah, I mean, like you think the asset that you have when you're young is youth,
Right.
right? You have your body rebounds quickly, your cardiovascular, you can build it up in a matter of weeks.
Yes.
Your body fat percentage is low, so you can eat whatever you want.
Yes, you have lots of time. You have lots
time.
of extra time to come to practice.
And back then, I always trained consistently 3 or 4 times a week. But sometimes during the summertime, I would train 7 days a week. But I didn't train like you. You trained 7 days a week.
I
But
tried to train 7 days a week.
I only trained 7 days a week during the summer. And I would take, 3 weeks off, and then since you get all mad at me and stuff. But the asset you have as a young person is you have the body, but you have no mind, right?
No.
That's the hardest part, is that you don't have that mental stamina to withstand training. You don't have the mental stamina to withstand Free Sensei.
Yeah, you don't have the temperament to. You don't have the temperament to weather the martial arts environment that we were in.
Like in our time when we had intensive was always 6:30 a.m. on Saturdays, the first Saturday of every month. You had 6:30 a.m. intensive. You had breakfast afterwards, and it was an unspoken rule that
Every class.
that you
stay
had
for
to take
class.
stay for all the other classes.
Yes.
And I hated that. Right. And then because the thing is that my mind can only really last mentally an hour and a half, 2 hours. So intensive is an hour and a half. And then you go to breakfast, and then you got to get back on the mat with your wet gi. And then, the classes weren't easy.
No.
Right.
And if I was lucky, you and Sensei would go to the supermarket or something, and he'd tell me, you teach class. And then I would make the class like super easy because I felt all bad. Or James would teach, James Doy, and he would make the class, he would talk a lot, and I'd be like,
Relief.
yeah. But
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, but I mean, but the whole point is that like you didn't have this mental stamina. So Free Sensei, he didn't force us. He didn't say you have to stay for all classes. But if you walked out after intensive to go home, everybody would look at you like, "What the heck are you doing?"
Yeah, you just didn't want to deal with it.
So you just stayed. I remember advanced class was the last class on Saturdays, and they just said, "Oh, what do you have to do for the rest of the day?" And I go, "Oh, nothing." They go, "You're staying for advanced class." And I was like, well, I don't want to. And then they just made me stay for advanced class.
Yeah. It was tough. It was definitely, there was a special toughness to that kind of 3, 4, 5 hours worth of Aikido.
Well, but the thing is that the toughness is since he forced it upon you.
Right.
Because when we had demonstrations, it was all hands on deck.
Right.
Yes.
On Saturdays, when we had to do all the classes for intensive, there was no, I don't really feel like it, Sensei.
Right.
Right. If you didn't come regularly, Sensei would get mad at you.
Right.
Remember you talked about like he would be at the bottom of the stairs or at the door.
Right.
Oh, thanks. Have a good day. When are you coming next, Bill?
Are you coming to the next class?
See you
coming next
tomorrow.
day? Yeah.
Oh, hi, Sensei. I'll see you tomorrow.
And then you think, oh, shoot, I said yes.
Now I got to show up.
Darn it, I got to show up.
I totally remember that. I have very vivid memories
But
of that.
that forcing us, I think, I don't know what you maybe think, but forcing us is what gave you this mental fortitude, right?
Right.
You know,
I completely agree.
that laugh in the dojo, cry in the dojo, laugh on the battlefield.
Yes.
So I'd just be like, phew. And then I don't know about you, but there was a point in my training where I didn't sweat in class.
Really?
I would wear my gi like for the whole week, and it wouldn't be wet at all. Yeah, like there was a time for about 10 years that I was such in good shape that the classes were easy, and I wore the same gi for the entire week.
For me, it doesn't matter. I would sweat anyways. It doesn't matter if it was easy or hard. I would just sweat. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it was just kind of an interesting thing. I was like, oh yeah, there was a time where I only had one gi and I wore it the entire week.
That sounds disgusting.
But I didn't sweat. My kekogi was not
Wow.
wet at all.
Lucky you.
Yeah, well, not. Yeah, it's not. I wasn't. I wasn't quite James Doyle level where he doesn't sweat.
Yeah,
But
that guy don't sweat at all.
And then I remember the Cal State LA judo program closed, and then they sold all the loaner gis, and I bought a whole bunch of the loaner gis, and then that's for the longest time just wore those loaner gis. But like, yeah, I mean, you get into really good shape because you have the body to get in shape, you have the youth, but the mind is the thing you don't really have. Yeah.
So what do both of you, your chief instructor, senior instructor, and Aikido chief instructor Iaido, we've kind of talked about the pros and cons of being a young student, but as teachers looking out at the field of the students, what do you see as how age differentiates learning or ability to practice? Is there something that you both see as teachers about how you approach age in the dojo?
Well, I mean, are you asking about like how do you teach children versus adults?
I think it could be that. What I was thinking was, do you notice that you have to adjust your instruction for who's attending or what their age?
Well, yes.
That's a given for no matter what age, because you can't talk to children the same way you talk to adults, right? And then you can't pontificate about the lint in your belly button to kids. They're just kind of like, huh?
They'll lose focus.
Yeah, like at breakfast this morning, one of the students is a music teacher, and he said that for his TK students, he has to have 10 lessons set up that go back to back to back to back to back, because he said if there's any gap, they'll lose focus and then you'll lose the room. Right? And then adults, they use their minds all day in their jobs.
They need to switch it off.
When they come to class, you see them go step 1, step 2, and as they even look up 3, 4, and then that slows the movement down. So you hear me all the time say, stop thinking, don't think, just move, just move, just move, because they have to learn to turn their minds off.
Right.
And then turning your mind off took 10 years
to learn.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's not true. Maybe it didn't take 10 years. Turning my mind off in Aikido probably took 5 years, to where I can instantly just go, pew! And I have ADHD. But now, I mean, I can go, pew! And then just focus on that thing. So, I mean, but when you teach an older person, they're gonna think about it too much.
Yeah. Because they have a lot on their mind.
And you become more of a ponderous person when you get older.
Yeah.
Right? So you're like, yeah, let me think about that. No, move.
Yeah, you tend to overthink. Like, why are we doing this?
Yeah,
how do we do this?
Why would you do that?
But really, you just have to make your body do the movement, and when you master the movement, somewhere along the line, your mind goes, "Oh, that's why I do that."
Well, that's where like Kojima Sensei was talking about from Zenshuji, that everyone comes to the Dharma talk, but no one stays for Zazen.
Right.
Yeah.
And you go, yeah, I could see that. Yeah. Right. Because the internet age has taught us anything. It's like, oh, you think you have the knowledge, that knowledge is the same thing as wisdom.
Yes.
But it's not.
It's not. The wisdom has to enter your bones and your muscles. The knowledge has to enter your bones and your muscles. And you can only do that through repetitive training. And the younger you start, the better your chances of it actually permeating your body.
So, we've talked about a little bit about the advantages and disadvantages of different age groups and how they learn. But looking back with your experience, do you think that there is an optimal time to learn something like Aikido, which is pretty hard discipline?
No. Every age group, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, they all have their advantages and disadvantages, right? So like if you think about this idea of being middle-aged, which I guess today I'm middle-aged, right? Even though I don't feel like it, this idea of being middle-aged, you don't have the endurance, the stamina, right? They say that, I remember studying in college that the average professional athlete starts to become deconditioned after 10 days of inactivity.
I've read that.
Yeah.
Right? So how old's the average professional athlete?
23, 24?
25. Let's just say 25.
Yeah.
And that person starts to lose conditioning after 10 days. If I'm 50, 5 days? 4? Probably 3, because I'm not in the greatest shape.
Right.
And so you're losing conditioning. How quickly do you get out of shape? Right. So the middle-aged person has to be more consistent.
Right.
They have to, really think about recovery and rest. Let their muscles rest. But then they have the wiseness of age. No, I can't do that. Oh, I can do this. Or they can also build in a progression and a step-by-step program to develop themselves, which
Right.
a young person just goes, do it.
They just throw themselves
they
at
just
it.
throw themselves at practice.
Grip it and
just
rip it.
Move any which way they want to.
So I think the answer to this question is no, but is Aikido particularly dangerous for older people?
No, I mean, it's dangerous for everyone.
Right.
The fad on the internet is to teach children breakfall, but that's dangerous.
Yeah, that's not appropriate.
Because they're doing studies now that the concussions that the CTEs that people are experiencing in their 30s and 40s,
They already had.
as teenagers.
Right.
It just got worse and worse and worse.
Right.
And you think, oh man, so young people, they can get hurt, and it can be dangerous. We were talking the other day via text, me, you, and Mark, that Ruth Sensei said that children should not do Nikkyo. Right? And I was like, whoa, why? And then none of us ever asked, but you wonder about dangers to the joint, flexibility, all these different things. And you think,
Growing connective tissue.
Yeah, growing to connective tissue and all this stuff.
And also, children don't have that much control over their technique.
Right? So they can grip it and rip it and
Grip it and rip it.
Break someone's hand.
So, and then a person as they get older, I must have had ADHD and anxiety when I was younger. I just maybe didn't know it. But after I had that last concussion,
It's worse.
it's, maybe we'll show this video. But when I hit my head,
Yeah. I know the video you're talking about.
the ADHD became dramatic and the anxiety became dramatic. And,
wow.
at that time, it was 2005. I was an expert in ukemi, and I still hit my head. And today, when one of the students who's 65 said, "Hey, can I learn breakfall?" And I was like, "No, you should not do that."
No.
I mean,
Interesting.
I could read in a moving vehicle. Today, if I try to read in a moving vehicle, I'll throw up.
Huh.
I can't even ride a carousel with children, or else I'll throw up.
Wow.
Like, I used to be able to read in a moving vehicle and laugh at all my friends. Oh, and just read on the plane. I can't read on a plane.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's all because of this last concussion, the last one. And then I'm going to subject someone who's 65 to that? No, don't. It's dangerous. You can get over the top and you could do breakfall, but if you hit your head like I did,
It's over, right?
I can't read anymore. I love to read, and I see people reading in a cafe. I'm all, I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
Just can't do it anymore.
So basically, no matter what age you are, it's always important to practice in a balanced, reasonable way. Even though it's like you're gripping and ripping it, you still have a sense of control and precision, you would say?
And proper progression, step by step.
Step by step. Yeah.
Are you ready? Yes, you move up to the next one. Have you cleared that stage? Move to the next one.
Yeah.
And then people are teaching people how to take breakfall. But, we talked about this before. You should only go to breakfall when your forward roll is exceptional.
Yes. You have no qualms about being thrown across the room.
You could do it. People could do whatever they want.
That's true.
I'm becoming the old fuddy-duddy, but dude, I'm the one with the concussion,
Yeah.
right? I'm the one who goes, oh, can't read that, and then when I get real tired, it feels like my eyeballs are bouncing back and forth.
Oh, really?
I can't focus my eyes at all. I go, time to go to sleep.
Do you do books on tape? Is that how you handle that?
I do books on tape, and then I can read on my phone because of the backlight.
Interesting.
But I can't read on an e-reader. I got an e-reader for Christmas last year.
Doesn't
work. But if I read it on my phone with the light in a certain intensity without contacts on, like this, close, I can read. But I mean, dude, those are a lot of contingencies just to read something, right? So any book, I have to listen to it on tape, or I have to read it on my phone as a PDF, and the backlight on the phone is better than the e-reader.
Well, so the lesson from that is train carefully.
Yeah, I mean, and then, you know, that concussion came on a video shoot
Yeah.
for the USA Network in a Steven Seagal movie. Thanks, Steven Seagal. But I mean, it's, you know, but as you get older, your bones become more brittle.
Mm-hmm.
So cranking the wrist on someone who's 25 and cranking the wrist on someone who's 50, that could break their wrist or damage their wrist.
Especially depending on their ukemi skill.
Yeah. And then every injury you get takes about 6 months. I tore my meniscus last year. It took 8 months to recover. And I'm a professional, and it took me 8 months to recover.
You tore your meniscus?
Yeah, remember at the seminar?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, not last year, the year before.
I mean, like, I tore my meniscus. I have a slip disc.
Yeah.
And I have to train very carefully. I cannot train like I was 20, get thrown every which way and your body's flailing around. I have to move very, very carefully and precisely, or I'm going to get messed up.
But then that's the hard part, that Aikido becomes less martial and more exercise. So like, you know, this idea that Aikido is just merely exercise. Is it just exercise?
Aikido is definitely not just exercise.
Oh, if Ruth Sensei was hear you say Aikido is exercise, he'd beat you up.
Oh,
man.
yeah. I mean, in exercise, no one's trying to cave your head in with a strike or trying to kick you or
So the exercise is
you.
a collateral benefit.
It is collateral benefit, but
yes,
is Aikido being de-evolved or evolved towards something like Tai Chi, where now it's just the hands are moving and your body is moving? There's no real martial effectiveness to it.
I think part of what both of you guys are talking about is like, I know Sensei, you and I have spoken about this, and I think you and I can also, is like, if you're training hard and you're trying to develop your expertise, the one thing you don't want to be is dogged out in practice.
Right, because what did Patton say? Fatigue makes cowards of us all. Right?
Yeah.
The other day, David Goggins was talking about dragging people out to deep water, you know, and seeing who they really are. When you drag someone into deep water, you figure out who they really are. Yeah, I mean, and then, you know, not to change the subject, but when that happens, I think there's 5 different archetypes you become. You know, when you get tired, the teacher, the fake injury, the talker. Hey, so
like in the context of practice?
Yeah, to get out of practice, you go, hey, so how long you in town for? Hey, was that your car parked out there? Yeah, I noticed it. Red. You like red, huh?
Or
diversion.
Like the person that resists a technique so they don't have to move.
Yeah,
like that guy.
Or the teacher. Hey, let me. Oh no, this is what you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
And you see guys do it a lot to girls. Hey, excuse me, young lady. This is how you mansplaining the technique.
Oh God, like I can't stand that.
But, you know, like that's the hard part about, like, yeah, I mean, if you're not in shape, you know, fatigue makes cowards of us all.
Right. I think that's the collateral benefit. Like if you think about training, or, you know, I'm not a boxer, but I know you've boxed. Like boxers, like if they don't get their aerobic trained, if they get dogged out, even if they're highly skilled, they'll lose.
Yeah.
And so I think like we've always been lucky because at this dojo, practice has always been
Physical.
And like, if you've practiced here a long time, you're not going to get dogged out in a hard. You might get tired in a hard class, but you're not going to get dogged out.
Yeah.
Well, you're hoping like the cumulative effect of hard cardiovascular training will benefit you in, you know, when you have to do Aikido. But like there was a funny thing. I think it was Dante Wilder, the famous boxer. He wore this like really gaudy like knight's outfit of some sort into the ring. So he had to walk all the way from the dressing room all the way to the ring, and then he fought and he lost. And he told everybody it was because he was wearing this heavy, costume, and then that wore him out from coming from the dressing room to the ring, and that's why he lost the fight.
So you get worn out before you get to the battlefield.
Well, but that's the thing. Like if you're a warrior, do you do such weird ornamental things to show off?
So I thought the story was going to go in a different direction. I thought you were going to tell me, because I don't know the story, that he was wearing heavy clothes. He gets in, takes it off, and now his body feels light. So it's like a psychological trick. But
well, he lost.
Right,
so
no,
he
that's
told
what I'm saying.
everybody.
He lost. Yeah, the trick. If there was a trick, it failed. But I was thinking, like in my mind, like that would be a way to trick your body that the actual exertion would be less because you came in weighing 190 pounds and you take 30 pounds off and all of a sudden you're spry and energetic.
No, but it was like this really gaudy big costume that he wore, and then you got in the ring and then you got beat. But that's the thing, like as a martial artist, there is no, well, I got tired.
Right.
No
Absolutely
matter what
not.
age you are, kid, young adult, older folk, like there's no, hey, I got tired and I got beat, right? Fatigue makes cowards of us all. So if the moment your cardio goes, techniques come in second, right? And then technique goes, and then the person's overpower
Right,
you.
you're done.
And that as you get older, you can't rely on physical strength,
No.
endurance, stamina, speed. You have to develop technique.
Yeah, timing, your sense of spacing.
But that's the thing, is to understand that, and that if you start Aikido in your middle age, you hope that, for one, you have the fortitude to last long enough to get to a place where you can start to work on those things, but also that you don't get hurt.
Yeah. If you get hurt, then you'll be out for like much longer than if you and I got hurt back in our 20s. We're back in, what, few days, a week?
Yeah, I mean, the other day I was on my way to the gym, which I do lift weights now. I preface that because people know who listen to this podcast, I talked about not lifting weights. But I lift weights now because my shoulder is so messed up that I got to lift weights to keep the shoulder in its proper position.
Oh, geez.
And I dropped off the kids at school, and I was just getting ready to turn. And I dropped off the kids, and I'm waiting to line the drive away. I text Mike, I go, time to be a big boy, go to the gym. And then I went to turn right, and I looked, and my back spasmed. I was like, oh, gosh. I turned right, and I go, I guess I'm going home now. And I had to go home and then work it out. And then it's just like, oh, my God. And that took a week to subside.
That is
all I did
nuts.
was look right, and then my back spasmed.
There is something about starting when you're younger, because your body becomes conditioned from a very, very early point to become an Aikidoist body, if that could make any sense. So,
it makes sense.
Yeah, so as you get older, you're able to
Rely on that.
If you don't go too crazy with like random movements, if you stay in control, you can still move freely, but precisely. If you have your timing and spacing down, you don't really have to put too much stress on one specific part of your body. Like if you move your body as a whole, your whole body can absorb whatever stress or energy, as opposed to isolating your shoulder and then, I just hurt my shoulder because that's the only thing that you move it. I mean, is there?
No, I mean,
there's something to that, right?
Yeah, because your tolerance becomes greater. That, like when I was younger, one time I hurt my back stretching before class. Like, my back hurt. And then I thought I should just go home. And I go, no. I want to see what it's like to take the whole class with my back out. And I took the whole class, and afterwards I go, that's what it's like to fight with your back spasmed. Oh, okay.
It's really interesting.
But I mean, but then if you compare and contrast that to just the other day, I go, my back hurts.
Right.
Just go home.
But then you, as a mature person, know better.
A wiser, experienced Aikidoist says, probably not.
Except that I think all three of us, for sure, and a lot of the senior people in the dojo, my experience has been that, like, unless it's like a really critical injury, you're always training with some level of an injury.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, your back's out. You're like you said, your knee,
thumb.
your back, your thumb. But see, you come to realize there's no easy days.
Right.
No.
So if you get, like, before I took my black belt test, I had 2 sprained thumbs and 2 sprained big toes right before I took my black belt test.
Yeah. Then you just did it
The
anyways.
Friday night before, someone punched my thumb doing ski. And then a few minutes later, someone punched the other thumb, and they were both sprained when I took my black belt test. But there was no excuse.
Right.
There wasn't like, Sensei, can I remediate for 2 weeks?
Yeah. Like,
No. Like, and then in our dojo, you could not say, I'm injured. You'd have to go to Sensei and say, I'm injured, and then he's gonna, how did you get injured?
Right. That
what
whole
did you
thing
do?
starts. Yeah.
And then you go, oh gosh. So you just said nothing. and you just gum on or persevered through the
Yeah.
thing. Like when Mark T was playing basketball and he rolled his ankle, he didn't tell Sensei, he just trained. And then I was like, why are you walking weird? I sprained my ankle a couple days ago. I go, oh, does Sensei know? He go, oh no, Sensei, don't say anything. Because if Sensei would have found out, he would have read you the riot act.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
he
been
would have
really
got
angry.
mad. Like, why are you playing basketball?
Yeah, what were you doing?
You shouldn't be playing basketball. You should be practicing, right?
And but that's the hard part is that at any age you could de-evolve Aikido into just exercise.
Yes.
It's just Tai Chi. It's just movement, but it's a martial art. It's not supposed to be exercise.
So to level up from just physical activity to a martial art, is discipline part of the difference? Because there are disciplined athletes that are not doing a martial art, but is there something unique about discipline for Aikido or martial arts that's different than just basketball?
No, I think they're all people of high level,
Yes.
right? If
Of
go to-
anything.
if you go to LeBron James, you go, hey, are you hurt? He goes, when am I not hurt?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
You ask me, you go, hey, what's hurting on you? Oh, shoulders, my back, this thing, that thing. You have all these things, but the normal person goes, I probably shouldn't do this when they feel this pain.
Right.
Yeah.
But the martial artist or the professional athlete or even a semi-professional athlete goes, that's just part of the deal, right? So you have to have this discipline to go, can't give up, right? You go, when I went to take my black belt test, I had those, thumbs and toes sprained. You can't go, well, I can't do this.
So the physical pain is a way to develop resiliency under unknown future risks or harms.
Well, you just have the ability to discipline yourself. Like I have this, my new quote is that headless bodies feel no pain. That's my new quote. Headless bodies feel no pain. But
So make yourself headless.
making yourself headless, it's not pain is just the feeling.
Loses its power.
But if you were to chop your own head off, you would no longer feel pain. You would no longer feel emotion. You would no longer feel any things because your head interprets this signal from your toe as pain.
Right.
Your head interprets this pain from your heart as emotion, as anger, as sadness. And you have to be this person. When you lose your head, you cut off your head, you can't feel pain. You can't feel anger. You can't feel sadness.
You don't rationalize anything.
You don't rationalize. And so when you get older, the thing you're really trying to work on is the discipline of the mind. When you're young, you have to have the discipline of the body because you're going to eat whatever you want. You're going to stay up late. You're going to do all these ridiculous things.
Right.
You have to have more discipline of the body. You're going to be more reckless with your body when you're older. But then when you get older, you have to have discipline of the mind. I can't do this today. I have to do this tomorrow.
I mean, would you say it's something akin to how they say when you come to the dojo, you take your head off, put it by the door, and you go into practice? Like it's all ego that's telling you, I'm going to train. Or even ego saying, I'm not going to give up.
Right.
That's your ego saying, I'm going to give up.
And your ego saying, I should give up.
I should give up. Yeah. You just do what you have to do. Not robotically, but because that's the natural order of things is to train regularly.
Is that a Japanese folk tale or is it specifically a martial arts related idea of being headless?
Cutting off your head and going on the mat or what I said that headless bodies feel no pain.
That one.
No, it's just my own understanding.
Your understanding.
My own understanding is that okay, so there's this thing, and maybe I should have talked about this, or it's called the counterclockwise study. You ever
Don't
heard
know
of
it.
No.
Counterclockwise study. This is a study where I was going to take old men to a timeless retreat and have them live as if the past was the present. Okay, so everything was set up as if it was 20 years ago. And what they did was to live speaking in the present tense about the past. The comparison group reminisced for that week. It tells me I only have 10 minutes, so I'm not going to go into great detail about this because the other studies are interesting as well. The BBC production, I'm going to show the finale in the workshop tomorrow, actually just replicated this study. One important thing that we did, as we're driving to the retreat, I'm in this van with these 80-year-olds, and that was when 80 was 80, not the new 60. They were old. And I realized it was a sexist time. I didn't have my male postdocs or doctoral students with me. It was just 8 suitcases, 8 old men. We get off the bus, and I hadn't thought about this. It didn't come from any science. It came from my own laziness. I said, no way that I'm going to carry your suitcases. You're responsible for getting your suitcases up to your rooms. I don't care if you move it an inch at a time. Unpack it here, take out a shirt at a time. This made this event so absolutely different from the way they had been almost coddled to death that it set the stage for even this comparison group to do well. These are people who had been overloved, overcared for, believe that getting old means it's all over, one becomes incompetent quickly. And so what did we find? First, for those of you who weren't around in 1959, here's some of what it looked like. So they would have a movie at night, a discussion about these things during the day. They were in charge of everything. Both groups. Now, you tell me when you've heard that 80-year-olds' hearing improved, their memory improved without any special memory exercises, their strength improved. Even beyond that, for the experimental group, their joint flexibility improved, their arthritis diminished, their dexterity improved, their cognitive abilities improved, and their vision improved, which it doesn't say here. We took photographs before and then took again at the end of the week. We showed those photographs to people who knew nothing about the study, and they were also evaluated as looking significantly younger. They didn't look 50 years old, but they did look younger.
When they measured these people, and the people only stayed like a week,
Okay.
their blood pressure went down, their agility went up, all these things changed, and all they did was try to pretend that they were younger.
Wow.
Right? And so this idea that like your mind is controlling your perception and how your body moves, right? So when we say headless bodies feel no pain, is for you to try to understand that it's your mind which is telling you, I can't do that.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm
it's your ego, right?
I'm too old for that. Well, yeah, we call it as just a general thing. It's your ego. Your ego says you can't do that.
Yeah.
Hey, because remember, your ego's there to help you,
Mm-hmm.
keep you safe. So your ego goes, you don't want to do this, man. Go get a beer, get pizza. You go, yeah, you know what? I should enjoy myself. But that's the hard part, is that if you could cut off your head is telling you this is bad. Your head is saying this is wrong. Your head is saying that person hurt me, right? What does Hamlet say? Nothing is right or wrong, but thinking makes it so.
Yeah.
Right? And so your mind is telling you all these things, and you're going, yeah, I am old. Yeah, I do feel pain. Aren't you in pain? Yeah, I feel pain.
It's fascinating, that story. I've never seen that study. I'll have to read it. But
Yeah,
I mean,
I
if
never
you
did.
think about it,
Yeah.
it's beyond incredible.
So that's this idea. Your mind is leading your body. So if you say, I'm old, I can't do this, your mind goes, yeah, you probably can't. And then adjusts your body. So it's like you have to become in tune with your body. And like you go to Japan, and there are people training on the mat that are
Super old.
super
Yeah.
old.
Taking ukemi,
Taking
and
care
everything.
You're like, wow, that guy's 80 years old, forward rolling. Should you be doing that? And then they go, yeah, why wouldn't I be doing that?
Right. It's like that video I sent you that one time of the English boxer who's become a famous influencer, and he's 78. And you watch him train, like work in the bag, and you're like, that's impossible for a 78-year-old. And yet he's doing it. Well, what I think is really interesting about that study is that it collapses a folk understanding of how the mind-body works.
Right.
Like, and so,
but I mean,
think-
what do you mean by the full?
well, so
explain
like
that.
I think the folk explanation of mind-body is that we can't really identify how it works, but there's a separate part of you that thinks, and there's a different part of you that does, and we traditionally call that the mind-body separation. But what blows me away from that is like 1 week that when they had stimulus that made them think they were younger, their body responded like on a 1-to-1
in a 5-day study.
in 5 days. I mean, I want to like go back and try that now and like go back to being 30. Like I want to know more about that study, because we do talk about the mind-body separation, but they're saying like, look, if you think this way and you have the right stimulus, your body will respond. I mean, the hearing, getting your hearing better. I mean, both of you know that I'm like completely deaf in my left ear. So like just hearing that is incredible. It's one of the most incredible things I think I've heard this year to date.
And like Furuya Sensei, if you watched him walk,
Yeah.
he's waddling.
Yes.
He's like limping a little bit.
Yeah.
He's like holding his back, and then he puts on his kikogi
Demon.
and then starts teaching class. You're like, whoa.
Yeah, like you wouldn't think somebody of his size would move like that.
No.
But there's a lot of people who you don't think, this guy can't move. They get on the mat. Like, wasn't Osensei like that?
That's what I heard.
He could barely walk. He needed help. I've heard stories that he needed help to go to the restroom.
Yeah.
But he went on the mat and you could not touch him.
So do you think like using that study as a sort of a basis for an analogy with Aikido, can the teachers create the right inputs so that the students are, they get that training effect by changing the way they think, like you talked about the headless person. As teachers, do you think that the two of you can put that kind of stimulus into a student so that it immediately goes into their body?
Well, that's why when we talk about in the teachers' classes, that everything must be achievable to a point. And that it's funny because everything in the adult class must be achievable. But you told me something about children's class that Furuya Sensei said that you never let the children beat you.
Yeah, Furuya Sensei told me that you're not supposed to let the kids beat you. And Furuya Sensei never let any of the kids beat him when he taught. The reason why, I'm not really sure.
I used to think that was wrong. But now I realize after, the other day I go, oh yeah, it's not that you let them beat you or I beat them. It's that I make them work to beat me.
Yes.
Like when they do Ikkyo, like sometimes I make them like force me down just to get, a little bit of a physical workout for them because you're trying to develop their bones, their muscles, and then teach them how to push.
How to push mentally and physically.
Yeah. So yeah, I go, oh, but before I used to go, oh, that's wrong. You should not be beating the kids. I imagine that, here I am, like slapping the ball out of their hand, being all
like
cruel.
not like that, but I guess, I think now that I remember, when they throw you down, you're not supposed to let them completely throw you down. You have to make them work for it, just like you did with Ikkyo. You can't just let it go, oh, it's so easy to throw sensei. They have to know that they have to work hard to achieve a certain result.
So I think this part of the conversation is super interesting, but I have I want to reverse the question. So it sounds like from like that study, you get the right inputs, the person thinks a certain way, and their body responds in all these different measurable vectors that they're younger. Does it work the other way? So that is, I guess in Aikido training, does the physicality and the technique learning, does it create a more agile mind even if you're older? Is there a way where the study goes mental versus physical? Can it go physical to mental?
Well, yeah. I mean, your body influences your mind influences your body. So that's why I say if you make it achievable, that person walks out going, oh, I didn't think I could do that.
Right.
Wow. And then they go, wow, what else can I do? And then they're not thinking, well, I'm an old, decrepit person. Well, I can never do that. They go, wait, I did think that, but then I was able to do it.
Right. And then their mind changes.
Yeah. And then they go, wow, what else can I do? How else can I get in shape? Maybe remember Sensei always talked about Ben Suenobu?
Yes.
And
That's his name, Ben Suenobu.
And then he had bursitis.
Yes.
And then Sensei said, I correct me if I'm wrong, but he started training and then he said, oh, I have bursitis in my shoulder. I can't do this. And then Sensei goes, oh, just do what you can. And then he was he was older.
He was old.
Right. And then he just kept working at it. And then one day he went to the doctor and they go, oh, your bursitis is healed. How did you do it? He said, I just did Aikido.
Wow.
Right. But Sensei didn't go, oh, you can't do Aikido. You have bursitis. Oh, you can't do any of this. Sensei said, oh, just do what you can. Just try. And then just let him do it. And then it was fast, like a year.
I don't know what the time frame was, but yeah, like his bursitis was gone.
Yeah. And the doctor was like, how did you do it? And he goes, all I did was do Aikido. And he was an older man. And if I remember Sensei talking about it correctly, that it wasn't more than like a year.
Wow.
It just one day he showed up and it was gone.
I mean, when I heard that story, I realized that's the benefit of Aikido training, the movement, the way you issue power, the way your balance, posture, the smoothness of the movement. You know, how like they say your joint, Aikido always bends the joints in the way they're supposed to be bent. They never hyperextend the joint. So actually, correct Aikido training actually makes your body stronger.
But what you're asking though is that can the body influence the mind?
I think, yeah, that's
But
what I meant.
so that's what he's talking about. You build your physical stamina, you build your physical strength, and then you gain that confidence.
Right.
And then not only that, but you go, wow, you know, all my friends, they're in walkers and wheelchairs, but here I am walking. I didn't really think that could be possible. You know, that it's just your mind said, oh, you can't do that. And you went, yeah, you're right.
So have you ever heard this story? And this is a story that Furia Sensei told me, that through the Aikido training, the movement, he said this, and I don't know if it's true, but he said, Sensei, through Aikido, his brain sharpened and he could do these complex mathematical equations in his head. I don't know if that's true or if he was like just a soroban, a soroban is an abacus, like an abacus person, like abacus. Like when you've mastered the abacus, you actually have an abacus in your head and you can mentally calculate without the physical abacus. It's just like swordsmanship. You're so good at the sword, you don't need a sword anymore.
Dude, have you seen those kids that they show the class and then some of the kids are doing abacus and then the other kids are doing it abacus in the air?
In the air.
And then there's some that are just sitting there with, you know, like doing it in their mind?
Yeah, my sister-in-law does that.
Really?
Yeah, like Juliet's sister. She's really good at abacus. She's
Wasn't she an accountant or something?
Something like that. But she's also Japanese, so you know,
because they're better, right?
Where like you're taking abacus, but it's amazing. So I don't know if it's Sensei was his mind sharpened because the movement is actually kind of sophisticated in Aikido. It's not just like it's multidimensional.
Well, I mean, you know, as a martial artist, a chess master, they say, is 12 steps, thinks 12 steps ahead.
Right.
So as a martial artist, you should be able to think 12 steps ahead or more. So doing a very complex mental calculation,
It's similar.
You're kind of keeping 12 things together at once, at least,
Yes.
at least. So, the story makes sense. It's just that you wonder at what age are we talking about? If you say, oh, yeah, it was a year before he died, you go, ooh, he's quite old or advanced in age to be able to master that thing. But do you remember when Yonemochi Sensei came and that he would talk to Sensei about like every day he still gets up and reads the Wall Street Journal or whatever it is, the Financial Times, and that he can tell you what the stock price was like 20 years ago?
That's amazing.
Do you remember Sensei talking about that?
No.
But he was talking about how he could tell you what certain stocks were like 20 years ago.
I only have really one memory of Sensei talking to Yonemochi Sensei. So apparently, to train himself, Yonemochi Sensei every day in the bathroom would do kokudosa against the porcelain side of the tub. And you think like, what's going on with that? This sort of self-training.
Well, but that's the thing. You become an Aikidoist in every aspect, and you can't set it down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You're doing it against the wall. You're pushing the shopping cart doing kokudosa.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's how deep the Aikido training gets into your mind and body, that you really want to, you're so interested in this topic that you can't, it's like that, what was that, Shall We Dance?
Yes.
The Japanese movie Shall We Dance, Richard Gere redid it, where in the Japanese one, the guy is, working at his desk and he's doing the dancing footwork
Yeah.
at his desk. In the Richard Gere one, he's standing at the platform doing the dance moves while he's just standing there
In the subway?
in the subway.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I totally relate to that, because you do things like when you're just idle, like
The repetition.
yeah, my wife would go, "You're doing Aikido in your head, aren't you?" It's like, "Oh yeah, I am." Like, you know,
But that's that trying at every part of your training. If you're training in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, there are all these different. You're trying to keep the connection mental to physical, and then as you get older, you lose the physicalness, right? Like what was it? Moriji Mochida, the famous kendo teacher, he says at 70 you lose the ability to move your feet. So then you have to use your ki or your mind to do the techniques, but you're always trying to ensure the connection between your mind and body, no matter what age or decade that you start at. In the 20s, you think it's all physical.
yeah,
When you get older, you realize it's all mental.
yep,
100%
exactly,
all mental.
100% all mental.
David Goggins' book, You Can't Hurt Me.
Right.
He's just basically telling you all his mental tricks that he plays on himself to make sure he doesn't quit.
Yeah.
It's all mental.
I mean, for me,
It's all mental.
the most inspiring part of Aikido, it could be other martial arts too, is when you have a student who starts in their 50s or their 60s, and I try to imagine mentally what that would be like. This is like, you guys have been doing it more than me, but this is my 31st year, and I try to imagine I'm 56. What if I started today? Like that's where like it all gets mental, right? Because if you start at 55 or you start at 65, you've got to have this built-in ability to not worry about your rank, not worry about anything other than just getting good. And that, to me, that's a superpower.
Do they even think about getting good? Or are they just thinking about how can I just continue to do
The
this
next practice.
without getting hurt to where I have to stop doing this?
Yeah. But I mean, for me, that's always blown my mind in martial arts, but it happens in other things too. I mean, you hear stories about artists or writers that don't start till their 50s or their 60s, or even later. There was this one article I saw in the Financial Times about the ages of entrepreneurs that started their big companies. And, you know, there were a lot of young ones, but there were people in their 40s, 50s, 60s that started, like, this is a dumb example, but Kentucky Fried Chicken, apparently the guy who started that, he was 63 when he started that business.
The Colonel.
Yeah. But I mean, I do think, like, to me, that's like the superpower. It kind of goes off the study you were mentioning on counterclockwise, is that if you can start something at a late age and trick your mind into beginner's mind, because I think also the other thing is, if you're starting Aikido at 55 or 65, you're probably an accomplished person
Yeah.
in your
Most
career
likely.
or your personal life or everything. And then you've got to like say, how do I create beginner's mind when I am an expert in everything else?
Well, I mean that's again, it's just a mind game you play.
Right.
You tell yourself, I can do this.
But it's to me, it's very admirable. Like I would like to have that kind of mental fortitude.
I completely agree, because as an older person, as a person who's not in the same shape as they were when they were 20,
Yeah.
person who when they get injured, it takes a really long time to recover. I'm like, wow, that's
Impressive.
it's very impressive that people start Aikido
Late.
late.
You know, talking about this, it seems like there is this incredibly strong connection going both ways for mind and body when we're talking about age. And it sounds like from both of your experience that age is not an impediment to being an Aikidoist.
Age or aging is not an impediment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really good spot for us to wrap up. Final thoughts?
Age ain't nothing but a number, right? And that you have to think to yourself, it's just a game you play.
Right.
You can jump 20 feet when you're a kid, and now you can only jump 10. You just have to jump twice, right? But it's your mind that tells you can't.
Right. Absolutely. I agree with that. I think that's a really good place to stop. This has been a great discussion.
Yeah. So thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.